There are two types of people in this world: those who say, "Why does this always happen to me?" and those who say, "How can I make this work for me?" Picture someone hitting snooze for the third time, scrolling through their phone in bed, versus someone using those same 10 minutes to plan their day with intention. The first group lives by default, letting life happen to them. The second group lives by design, creating the life they want. Recent research confirms this gap is growing wider every year. But here's the good news. This video reveals 5 simple methods backed by neuroscience research to help you make that crucial 1% shift every single day. Let me show you exactly how default living plays out in real life. The default life epidemic. Sarah opens her eyes to her phone alarm for the third time, hits snooze again, then scrolls through Instagram while still in bed, comparing her messy hair to everyone else's highlight reel. She tells herself she'll start eating healthier today, then orders DoorDash breakfast because cooking seems impossible. This is her 5th food delivery this week. Studies show the majority of people let circumstances control their day rather than setting intentions. These are the default people who wake up reactive, not proactive. They scroll first, think second. They plan a change tomorrow while doing the same things today. Default people have mastered the art of creative blame. Their phone made them scroll for 2 hours straight. Their bed was too comfortable to get up early. Their coffee wasn't strong enough to motivate them. Their job is too stressful to meal prep. Everything and everyone else is responsible for their situation except them. The excuses are endless and impressively creative. The weather is too cold to exercise, too hot to be productive. The gym is too crowded in January, too empty in March. Default people can find a reason why any day is the wrong day to begin improving their life. Research shows people who plan their days intentionally report higher life satisfaction than those who simply react to whatever happens. The price of letting life happen to you instead of creating the life you want is measurable and steep. Default people expect their bank account to grow while avoiding budgets. They want to lose weight while keeping the same eating habits. They desire better relationships while putting in the same effort. They wish for career advancement while doing the minimum required work. They want different results from identical actions, like expecting a different destination while driving the same route every day. Modern life makes default living easier than ever. Social media algorithms feed you content that keeps you scrolling instead of creating. Streaming services autoplay the next episode, so you never have to decide to stop watching. Food delivery apps make unhealthy choices more convenient than cooking. Everything is designed to keep you reactive instead of proactive. Decision fatigue hits default people harder because they make the same choices repeatedly without thinking. They check their phone the same way every morning. They eat the same convenient foods. They follow the same routines that produce the same unsatisfying results. They're stuck in autopilot mode, letting their environment make decisions for them instead of designing their environment to support better choices. Default people are professional procrastinators with advanced degrees in later. They'll start the diet next Monday. They'll begin exercising after this busy period at work ends. They'll start saving money when they get their next raise. They'll improve their relationships when things calm down. The perfect moment never comes because they're waiting instead of creating it. The default mindset shows up in conversations too. Default people complain about problems without proposing solutions. They point out what's wrong without taking action to fix anything. They share their struggles but resist suggestions for improvement. They want sympathy more than change. They prefer being right about why something won't work over being wrong about trying something new. What's fascinating is that default people often know exactly what they should do differently. They can give great advice to friends about exercise, nutrition, career moves, and relationships. They understand the theory of improvement but struggle with the practice. They're experts at planning but beginners at executing. They know the right answers but choose the wrong actions. The default trap is comfortable because it requires no risk. If you don't try, you can't fail. If you don't set clear goals, you can't miss them. If you don't take responsibility, you can't be disappointed in yourself. Default living feels safe in the short term, but becomes expensive in the long term. You avoid temporary discomfort by accepting permanent dissatisfaction. Social media makes default living look normal because everyone shares their struggles publicly. Complaining gets likes and comments. Venting feels like connection. Shared misery creates temporary bonds. Default people find communities of other default people who validate their choices and reinforce their excuses. They surround themselves with people who make their lack of progress feel acceptable. Default living looks like planning tomorrow while repeating the same unhelpful habits today. It's the cycle of good intentions followed by familiar actions. It's knowing what needs to change, but choosing comfort over growth every single time. But here's what default people don't realize. While they're waiting for perfect conditions, blaming circumstances, and expecting change without changing, there's another group of people quietly building the lives they want. These people face the same obstacles, have the same 24 hours, deal with the same challenges, but respond completely differently. This other group doesn't wait for motivation, they create it. They don't blame their environment, they design it. They don't hope for better results, they take actions that guarantee them. They don't expect change, they become the change. They've discovered something that default people haven't. Small intentional improvements compound into massive results over time. The gap between default and design living isn't about talent, luck, or circumstances. It's about choice. Every morning, you choose to hit snooze or get up. You choose to scroll or read. You choose to order takeout or cook something healthy. You choose to complain or take action. These choices seem small in the moment, but create vastly different lives over time. The good news is that switching from default to design doesn't require a complete life overhaul. It doesn't need perfect conditions or unlimited willpower. It doesn't demand that you become a different person overnight. The transformation happens through specific methods that upgrade your life by just 1% each day. These small shifts create momentum that builds into unstoppable progress. You've probably noticed these other people around you. They seem to operate by completely different rules. Design life superpowers revealed. They wake up at 5:30 a.m. without hitting snooze once. They actually look forward to Monday mornings like normal humans look forward to pizza delivery. They respond to emails within hours instead of weeks. They meal prep on Sunday afternoons while the rest of us are still recovering from weekend decisions. These people seem like they belong to a different species entirely. Watch a design person handle a crisis, and you'll witness something remarkable. When their flight gets canceled, they're already rebooking, while default people are still complaining to whoever will listen. They handle the same situations that completely derail default people with an almost supernatural calm. Design people see choices clearly and decide faster, which research shows leads to better results. They choose their workout clothes the night before. They know what they're eating for lunch before they get hungry. They pick their outfit while default people are still staring into their closet wondering why they own so many clothes but have nothing to wear. They seem to have eliminated decision fatigue from their lives through some mysterious process. The strangest thing about design people is how effortless they make everything appear. They finish work projects early. They remember birthdays without Facebook reminders. They actually read the books they buy instead of letting them collect dust. They maintain their cars, water their plants, and somehow still have time for hobbies. They live like they have more hours in their day than everyone else. Research links intentional living to better outcomes in career, relationships, and well-being. What makes these differences even more intriguing is that design people don't appear to work harder. They work smarter. They don't hustle more hours. They optimize the hours they have. They don't sacrifice sleep for productivity. They structure their days to maximize both rest and output. They don't eliminate fun from their lives. They schedule it intentionally instead of hoping it happens accidentally. The most fascinating observation about design people is how they handle setbacks. When they miss a workout, they don't abandon their fitness routine. They just go the next day. When they overspend one month, they adjust their budget instead of giving up on financial planning. When they eat unhealthy food, they don't declare their diet ruined. They make a better choice at their next meal. They treat mistakes as data points rather than personal failures. Design people have mastered the art of recovery. They bounce back from failures faster than default people bounce back from minor inconveniences. A design person who gets rejected for a job application starts applying to other positions that same day. A default person who gets rejected might spend weeks questioning whether they're qualified for anything. The resilience gap explains much of their different outcomes. This raises the obvious question, are design people just born different? The answer might surprise you. Design people weren't born with special powers. They developed them through specific, learnable behaviors. They don't possess supernatural willpower. They created systems that make good choices easier than bad choices. They don't have more motivation than default people. They built habits that function independently of how they feel on any given day. They discovered that consistency beats intensity every single time. The secret weapon of design people isn't perfection. They don't eat perfectly every meal, exercise every day without exception, or never waste time. What makes them different is their response to imperfection. When they get off track, they have protocols for getting back on track quickly. They expect setbacks and plan for them instead of being surprised and derailed by them. Design people understand something that default people miss. Small intentional choices compound into massive advantages over time. They don't make dramatic changes that burn them out. They make tiny improvements that build momentum. They don't try to overhaul their entire life in one weekend. They upgrade one system at a time until their whole life transforms. The compound effect shows up everywhere in their lives. They read 10 pages a day instead of trying to finish entire books in single sittings. They save small amounts consistently instead of waiting for large windfalls. They exercise for 20 minutes daily instead of planning elaborate workout routines they'll abandon. They understand that sustainable beats spectacular every time. A 2025 study of successful habit formers found that 87% regularly reviewed their tracking data and made systematic adjustments to their approach. Design people treat their personal development like scientists treat experiments. They track what works, eliminate what doesn't, and continuously optimize their systems. They turn self-improvement into a measurable process rather than a hopeful wish. Design people also understand the power of environment design. They don't rely on willpower to make good choices. They structure their surroundings to make good choices automatic. They keep healthy snacks visible and junk food hidden. They lay out workout clothes the night before. They delete social media apps when they want to be productive. They make their environment work for them instead of against them. The most encouraging truth about design people is that anyone can join their ranks. The behaviors that seem natural to them were once foreign and difficult. They struggled with the same challenges that default people face. The difference is that they persisted through the awkward learning phase until new behaviors became automatic. They didn't wait to feel motivated. They started before they felt ready. Design living isn't about becoming a robot who never enjoys spontaneity. It's about creating freedom through structure. When you handle your responsibilities efficiently, you have more time for fun. When you maintain your health consistently, you have more energy for adventures. When you manage your finances wisely, you have more options for experiences. Structure creates freedom rather than limiting it. The gap between default and design living comes down to 5 specific methods that anyone can learn and implement. These aren't complicated strategies that require advanced degrees or special circumstances. They're simple practices that create profound changes when applied consistently. They work regardless of your current situation, background, or previous failures. The transformation from default to design doesn't happen overnight, but it doesn't take years either. Most people notice changes within weeks when they implement these methods consistently. The compound effect accelerates once momentum builds. Small improvements create bigger improvements, which create even bigger improvements in an upward spiral of progress. The first method starts with something most people think they have, but actually don't a clear picture of where they're headed. Method 1, the vision clarity system. Most people's life vision resembles a bathroom mirror after a hot shower, completely fogged up and impossible to see through clearly. They have vague ideas about wanting to be successful or happy or healthy, but couldn't tell you what those words actually mean in their specific situation. They walk around with blurry objectives, wondering why they keep ending up in places they never intended to go. Ask someone what they want from life and watch them stumble through an answer that sounds like they're reading from a generic self-help book. They want to make a difference and follow their passion, and live their best life without defining what any of those phrases mean in practical terms. It's like trying to navigate with a map that only shows somewhere good as the destination. The vision clarity system takes traditional goal setting and makes it actually workable for real humans. Instead of creating elaborate vision boards with magazine cutouts that look nothing like your actual life, you write down your ultimate aim using specific language that your brain can actually process. This isn't about manifesting unicorns and rainbows. This is about programming your subconscious mind with clear instructions. Research shows daily written goals help the brain prioritize actions differently than just thinking about them. When you physically write something down, your brain activates regions responsible for motor skills, memory encoding, and language processing simultaneously. This creates multiple neural pathways to the same information, making it more likely to influence your daily decisions. Mental goals live in your head as fleeting thoughts. Written goals become external references that your brain treats as commitments. The framework for identifying what you actually want versus what you think you should want starts with brutal honesty about your current motivations. Society programs you to want the big house and impressive job title, but those external expectations might conflict with what genuinely drives you. Maybe you don't actually want to manage people, even though promotions typically require it. Maybe you prefer smaller spaces to large houses because they feel more comfortable. The key question becomes, if nobody else would ever know about your choice, what would you choose? This removes the social pressure that clouds most decision-making. When you strip away the need to impress others, justify your choices, or meet external expectations, your real preferences emerge more clearly. The problem most people face is having too many goals competing for their attention and energy. They want to lose weight, start a business, learn Spanish, improve their relationships, advance their career, travel more, read more books, and organize their entire house all at the same time. This scattered approach guarantees mediocre results across all areas because focused energy gets diluted. Your chief aim functions as the organizing principle that determines which other goals deserve your time and which ones can wait. If your ultimate aim is building a sustainable business, then learning sales skills supports that goal, while learning Spanish might need to wait. If your chief aim is becoming an exceptional parent, then career advancement might take a backseat, while relationship skills move to the front. Creating your vision clarity system involves 3 essential actions. First, define what success actually means to you in specific, measurable terms. Instead of writing, "I want to be financially secure," you write, "I want to have 6 months of expenses saved in my emergency fund and no credit card debt." Instead of "I want better relationships," you write, "I want to have meaningful conversations with my closest friends at least twice per month." Second, write down your chief aim and supporting goals using language that creates clear mental pictures. Your brain responds better to concrete images than abstract concepts. "I want to own a coffee shop that serves as a community gathering place where regulars know each other's names," creates a clearer target than "I want to be an entrepreneur." Third, review your written goals daily by reading them out loud. This feels awkward initially because most people aren't used to declaring their intentions clearly. It feels presumptuous to state what you want as if you deserve to get it. But this discomfort signals exactly why the practice works. When you vocalize your goals regularly, you desensitize yourself to the awkwardness and start believing that achieving them is normal rather than impossible. Take Marcus, who wrote down his goal of becoming a freelance graphic designer every morning for 6 months. He wasn't actively job hunting, but during casual conversations, he started mentioning his design interests. A neighbor mentioned needing help with business cards, which led to a referral to a small business owner who needed a complete rebrand. Within 8 months, Marcus had enough clients to quit his day job. The opportunities appeared because his daily goal review kept him alert to possibilities he might have otherwise missed. Studies demonstrate written goals improve follow-through compared to people who only think about their objectives mentally. Written goal setters make decisions faster because they have clear criteria for evaluating options. They experience less decision fatigue because their priorities guide their choices automatically. The daily repetition of reading your goals aloud serves multiple functions. It keeps your objectives fresh in your conscious mind instead of buried under daily distractions. It reinforces your commitment during moments when motivation wavers. It programs your subconscious to notice opportunities and resources that align with your stated aims. It transforms vague wishes into concrete intentions. But your vision also needs flexibility to evolve as you learn more about what you actually want and what's actually possible. The person you are today might not fully understand what will fulfill the person you become 2 years from now. Your written goals should be clear enough to guide daily decisions, but flexible enough to adapt as you gain new information and experience. This practice shows up in daily decisions through a simple filter. Does this choice move me toward my chief aim or away from it? When someone invites you to an event, you evaluate whether attending supports your ultimate objective or distracts from it. When you're deciding how to spend your evening, you choose activities that align with your written vision rather than defaulting to whatever feels easiest in the moment. The compound effect of having clarity saves time because you spend less energy debating what to do next. When your objectives are clear, most decisions become straightforward. You don't waste hours researching options that don't align with your aims. You don't get paralyzed by too many choices because you know which choices support your vision. Clarity also reduces decision fatigue by eliminating unnecessary decisions from your daily routine. When you know what you want to achieve, you automatically filter out activities, opportunities, and requests that don't contribute to that achievement. Your brain doesn't have to evaluate every option from scratch because you've already established evaluation criteria. Perhaps most importantly, clarity attracts opportunities because you notice and pursue possibilities that align with your stated aims. When you're clear about what you want, you recognize relevant opportunities that others miss. You speak about your goals in conversations, which leads to introductions and suggestions from people who want to help. You take action on possibilities because you know they fit your objectives rather than wondering whether they're worth pursuing. The vision clarity system transforms abstract dreams into concrete plans. It converts wishful thinking into intentional action. It changes hoping for better results into creating better results through systematic effort directed toward specific outcomes that matter to you personally. But having clear goals means nothing if you're surrounded by people who constantly question your ambitions or pull you back toward old patterns. The people in your daily environment shape your progress more than you might realize. Method 2, the strategic social circle audit. Your closest influences shape your habits more than you realize, which is why Method 2 focuses on the strategic social circle audit. Research confirms that your environment shapes your habits more than willpower does. You can have all the motivation in the world, but if you're surrounded by people who complain about everything, make excuses for their lack of progress, and settle for mediocrity, you'll find yourself doing the same things. Your social environment acts like a thermostat that regulates your behavior, pulling you back toward the group average whenever you try to rise above it. Take an honest look at your current social circle without judging anyone harshly. You probably have that one friend who always has fresh drama to share during every conversation. They never run out of stories about people who wronged them, situations that went badly, or reasons why life is unfair. Then there's the colleague who treats complaining like an Olympic sport, turning every team meeting into a session about what's wrong with the company, the industry, or the world. Don't forget the family member who responds to every dream you share with reasons why it won't work, why you're not qualified, or why you should be more realistic. These people aren't necessarily bad humans, but they're default people who will keep you stuck in default patterns if you let them. They've built their identities around being victims of circumstances rather than creators of their own experiences. When you start making positive changes in your life, they'll unconsciously try to pull you back to their level because your progress makes them uncomfortable about their own lack of progress. The challenge is shifting your social influences gradually without burning bridges or being cruel to people you care about. You don't need to make dramatic announcements about cutting people out of your life. Instead, you slowly spend less time with energy drains and more time with energy gains. You become less available for negative conversations and more available for positive activities. You stop initiating contact with people who consistently bring you down and start reaching out to people who lift you up. Finding design-minded people when you're surrounded by default thinkers requires positioning yourself in environments that encourage personal development. Workshops, skill-building classes, professional associations, volunteer organizations, and fitness centers attract people who invest in themselves. Online communities focused on specific interests or goals can connect you with like-minded individuals who live in different cities. The key is placing yourself where people are actively working to improve themselves rather than passively consuming entertainment or complaining about problems. Connecting with people who are slightly ahead of where you want to be requires swallowing your ego and accepting a beginner role in new situations. If you want to start a business, you need to spend time with entrepreneurs who are further along in their journey. If you want to get in shape, you need to exercise alongside people who already maintain healthy habits. If you want to advance your career, you need to build relationships with people who hold positions you aspire to reach. This means being the least knowledgeable person in the room sometimes, which can feel uncomfortable if you're used to being the expert in your current social group. But discomfort signals growth. When you're consistently the smartest, most successful, or most motivated person in your circle, you've stopped challenging yourself to expand. Watch what happens when you start making positive changes and notice how default people respond. They'll question your new habits with concerns disguised as care. They'll suggest that you're becoming obsessed or taking things too seriously when you start exercising regularly or reading instead of watching television. They'll joke about your healthy food choices or your early bedtime. They'll remind you of times you failed before when you talk about new goals. This resistance isn't personal, even though it feels personal. Default people need you to stay at their level to validate their own choices. If you can improve your life through consistent effort, it means they could too, but they'd rather convince you that improvement is impossible than admit they haven't been trying. They'll use phrases like, "You've changed," as if changing is something to apologize for rather than celebrate. Social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain, which explains why changing your social circle feels genuinely uncomfortable. Your brain interprets social isolation as a threat to survival because humans evolved in groups where belonging meant safety. This biological programming makes it challenging to distance yourself from negative influences, even when you know they're holding you back. Even well-meaning family members often resist your positive changes because they fear losing their connection with you. When you start improving your life, they worry that you'll outgrow them or judge their choices, so they unconsciously sabotage your progress to keep you at their familiar level. Research shows how dramatically social environment affects every area of life. People whose closest friends have healthy eating habits are significantly more likely to maintain healthy eating habits themselves. Those who socialize regularly with financially responsible people save more money than those who don't. Individuals whose social circles include people with strong marriages report higher relationship satisfaction in their own partnerships. The income correlation is particularly striking. People whose 5 closest relationships include higher earners tend to increase their own income over time, while those surrounded by lower earners tend to plateau at similar levels. This isn't about judging people based on their current financial situation, but rather surrounding yourself with people who have growth mindsets about money rather than scarcity mindsets. Expanding your network authentically means leading with helpfulness, offer support or resources, and genuine connections form naturally. People can sense when someone is networking with ulterior motives versus genuinely connecting with shared interests. The most valuable relationships develop naturally through common activities, mutual interests, and consistent positive interactions over time. The compound effect of surrounding yourself with intentional people who challenge you to grow shows up gradually, then suddenly. At first, you might not notice much difference besides feeling more energized after social interactions. Then you start adopting small habits that your new connections practice. You begin thinking differently about problems and opportunities. You raise your standards for what's acceptable in your life. Eventually, you realize that the person you've become through these relationships is fundamentally different from the person you were before. You've upgraded your mindset, your habits, your expectations, and your results by changing the people whose opinions and behaviors influence your daily choices. You've designed your social environment to support the life you want rather than the life you're settling for. But even with perfect clarity about your goals and the right people supporting your journey, most people still struggle with one critical mistake that sabotages their progress before they even begin. Method 3, the micro-goal mastery framework. That mistake is setting goals like they're planning to climb Mount Everest when they haven't even walked around the block. Method 3, the micro-goal mastery framework solves this by flipping the entire approach upside down. Most people decide on January 1st that this is the year they'll lose 50 pounds, start a business, learn a new language, and completely reorganize their entire life. By February 15th, they're back to their old habits, wondering why they lack the willpower to stick with their ambitious plans. They set goals so massive that failure becomes inevitable. The problem isn't with their intentions. The problem is with their approach. They're trying to leap from their current reality to their dream outcome in one giant jump instead of taking small steps that actually get them there. They want the transformation without the process. They want the destination without the journey. They want the results without doing the boring daily work that creates those results. Micro goals flip this entire approach upside down. Instead of setting goals so big they intimidate you into inaction, you set goals so small they feel almost silly not to do. Instead of committing to run 5 miles every day, you commit to putting on your running shoes every day. Instead of promising to write a novel, you promise to write one sentence. Instead of vowing to eat perfectly, you commit to eating one piece of fruit with lunch. These goals sound ridiculous because they're so easy to achieve that your brain doesn't register them as real challenges. But that's exactly why they work. Your brain doesn't resist small changes the way it resists big changes. When you tell yourself you need to exercise for an hour, your brain immediately starts generating excuses about why you don't have time. When you tell yourself you need to put on your workout clothes, your brain doesn't bother fighting back because the request seems harmless. Research shows that small actions take about 2 months to become automatic. When you repeat small behaviors consistently, you strengthen the neural pathways associated with those behaviors. Each repetition makes the behavior more automatic and less dependent on motivation or willpower. Your brain starts treating the small action as a normal part of your routine rather than something special you need to psych yourself up to do. The magic happens when you actually put on those running shoes every day. Once you're dressed for exercise, you often decide to walk around the block. Once you're walking, you might decide to jog for a few minutes. Once you're jogging, you might extend it to a full workout. The micro goal gets you started, and momentum carries you further than you originally planned. But even if you just put on the shoes and take them off, you still succeeded at your stated goal. Consider the person who commits to opening a business book every day versus the person who commits to reading for 2 hours every evening. The first person might only read 1 page some days, but they read something every single day. The second person reads intensively twice a month when they have long blocks of free time. After 6 months, the first person has finished multiple books and developed a consistent learning habit. The second person has read more pages in individual sessions, but less total content and no sustainable routine. The psychology behind why achieving small goals builds confidence works like compound interest for your self-esteem. Every time you complete a micro goal, you prove to yourself that you can follow through on commitments. Your brain starts identifying you as someone who does what they say they'll do. This identity shift affects how you approach bigger challenges because you have evidence of your own reliability. When someone who consistently achieves micro goals faces a larger objective, they approach it differently than someone with a history of abandoned resolutions. They break the big goal into smaller pieces because they've learned that small actions create big results. They trust themselves to show up consistently because they have a track record of showing up. They don't need to rely on motivation because they've built discipline through daily practice. The practical system for implementing this framework follows one core principle. Choose the smallest possible action that requires no setup yet directly aligns with your goal. If you want to learn Spanish, the smallest step might be installing a language app. If you want to start a business, the smallest step might be writing down one business idea. If you want to improve your marriage, the smallest step might be asking your spouse about their day and actually listening to the answer. Once you've identified the micro action, You commit to doing it every day for 30 days regardless of how you feel or what else is happening in your life. You don't allow yourself to skip days because you're tired, busy, or unmotivated. You don't negotiate with yourself about whether today is a good day for progress. You simply do the small thing because that's what you committed to do. Studies show tiny habits build momentum and resilience over time. People who consistently achieve small goals perform better when tackling larger objectives. They report higher confidence levels when starting new challenges. They abandon goals less frequently than people who don't practice micro-goal achievement. The habit of following through on small commitments transfers to bigger commitments. Micro-goals work across every life area once you understand the principle. For health, you might commit to drinking 1 extra glass of water daily instead of completely overhauling your diet. For career advancement, you might send 1 networking email per day instead of trying to attend 5 industry events monthly. For relationships, you might give 1 genuine compliment daily instead of planning elaborate romantic gestures. For finances, you might track 1 expense daily instead of creating comprehensive budgets you'll never maintain. The beauty of micro goals lies in their sustainability during difficult periods. When you're stressed, sick, traveling, or dealing with emergencies, you can still manage small actions. You might not be able to maintain hour-long workout routines during busy weeks, but you can still put on your exercise clothes. You might not be able to read entire chapters when life gets hectic, but you can still open a book. The consistency continues even when your circumstances change. The compound effect of building a track record of goal achievement transforms how you see yourself and how you approach challenges. Instead of being someone who starts things but doesn't finish them, you become someone who follows through consistently. Instead of depending on motivation to take action, you develop the identity of a person who shows up regardless of feelings. Instead of avoiding commitments because you might fail, you make commitments confidently because you have evidence of your own reliability. This track record becomes the foundation for tackling increasingly ambitious objectives. Once you've proven to yourself that you can keep small promises, you start making bigger promises. Once you've built the habit of daily progress, you can increase the size of your daily actions. The micro goals become the training ground for major life changes that once seemed impossible, but now feel inevitable. But here's where most people hit their biggest obstacle. Even with clear goals, supportive people, and manageable daily actions, they still struggle when their new choices make them stand out from everyone around them. Method 4, the courage to be different protocol. Method 4, the courage to be different protocol addresses the social pressure that derails most people's progress just when they start gaining momentum. When you stop participating in group complaints, people notice. When you leave social gatherings early to stick to your sleep schedule, they comment. When you order salad while everyone else orders burgers and fries, they question your choices. The fear of standing out runs deeper than simple social anxiety because choosing design feels like betraying your tribe when everyone around you lives by default patterns. Your family might interpret your self-improvement efforts as criticism of their lifestyle choices. Your coworkers might see your productivity habits as making them look bad by comparison. Your friends might worry that you're becoming too good for them. The social pressure to stay average is real and relentless. Research shows people unconsciously conform to their closest group's habits. Fear of social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain, which explains why going against social norms feels genuinely threatening. Most people would rather stay miserable with company than risk being happy alone. This conformity bias keeps people trapped in unfulfilling patterns because breaking free requires accepting temporary isolation. When you stop complaining about your problems and start solving them, you lose your membership in the complaint club. When you stop making excuses and start taking responsibility, you can't participate in victim bonding sessions. When you start pursuing meaningful goals, you have less time for meaningless activities that others use to bond. Watch how people react when you start making positive changes, and you'll see predictable patterns emerge. Initially, they'll express support and encouragement because they assume your motivation will fade like theirs always does. They'll say things like "good for you" and "I should do that too," while secretly betting that you'll quit within a few weeks. They're not being malicious. They're projecting their own relationship with change onto your situation. When your changes persist beyond their expectations, the reactions shift from supportive to resistant. They'll start questioning whether your new habits are sustainable or healthy. They'll point out potential downsides to your improvements. They'll remind you of previous times you tried to change and didn't stick with it. They'll suggest that you're becoming obsessed or taking things too seriously. They'll use concern as a weapon to pull you back toward their comfort zone. If you continue despite their resistance, they'll actively try to sabotage your progress by tempting you with activities that conflict with your new habits or scheduling social events during times you've blocked for personal development. Understanding the psychology behind this behavior helps you respond with compassion instead of anger. People try to pull you back to their level because your progress forces them to confront their own lack of progress. When you improve your life through consistent effort, you prove that improvement is possible, which makes their excuses feel less valid. They need you to fail so they can continue believing that change is impossible rather than admitting they haven't been trying. Expect discomfort from loved ones as normal when you change significantly. Your growth threatens their established role in your relationship dynamic. If you're no longer the irresponsible one, or the unhealthy one, or the unsuccessful one, they might have to examine their own positions in those categories. Practical strategies for handling criticism start with expecting it rather than being surprised by it. When you prepare mentally for resistance, you don't take it personally when it arrives. You recognize the criticism as evidence that your changes are significant enough to threaten other people's comfort zones. You interpret their discomfort as confirmation that you're moving in the right direction rather than proof that you should stop. Successful people handle social pressure by maintaining clear boundaries around their non-negotiable commitments. They don't justify their choices endlessly or seek permission from others to live according to their values. They simply state their decisions and move forward without needing universal approval. They understand that explaining your choices to people who are committed to misunderstanding them is a waste of energy. The key is responding to criticism without becoming defensive or aggressive. When someone questions your new habits, you can acknowledge their concern without abandoning your commitment. You might say something like, "I appreciate that you care about me, and this is something I need to do for myself." You don't need to convince them that your choice is right. You just need to maintain your choice despite their disagreement. People who successfully maintain positive changes despite social resistance develop strong internal validation systems that don't depend on external approval. They measure their progress against their own previous performance rather than comparing themselves to others. They celebrate their victories privately when public celebration isn't possible. They find at least one person who supports their journey, even if it's not someone in their immediate circle. The loneliness that comes with growth is real but temporary. When you stop participating in activities that drain your energy and time, you initially have fewer social connections. When you raise your standards for how you spend your time, you might not fit into your old social groups. This isolation phase tests your commitment to your values versus your need for social acceptance. Navigating this loneliness without giving up requires understanding that it's part of the process rather than evidence that you've made a mistake. Growth often requires a period of shedding old identities and relationships before new ones form. You're essentially becoming a different person, and different people attract different relationships. The loneliness signals that you're outgrowing your current social environment, not that you're destined to be alone forever. Actionable steps for staying true to your path while maintaining important relationships include setting clear boundaries without being rigid. You can love people without adopting their habits. You can spend time with family without abandoning your values. You can maintain friendships without participating in every activity they enjoy. The key is being selective about which compromises you make and which principles you protect. The compound effect of consistently choosing your values over others' opinions builds unshakable confidence over time. Each time you honor your commitments despite social pressure, you strengthen your internal guidance system. You learn to trust yourself more than you trust the crowd. You develop immunity to peer pressure because you've practiced making decisions based on your principles rather than other people's preferences. This confidence becomes magnetic to like-minded people who respect your integrity and consistency. As you demonstrate the courage to be different, you attract others who also have the courage to be different. You build relationships based on mutual respect for each other's growth rather than mutual agreement to stay stagnant. Your willingness to be temporarily unpopular for the sake of long-term fulfillment inspires others to examine their own willingness to conform. But even with the courage to stand apart from the crowd, most people still struggle with the one quality that separates those who achieve their goals from those who abandon them. Method 5, the daily discipline practice system. That quality is discipline, and method 5, the daily discipline practice system, transforms how you think about this misunderstood concept entirely. The word discipline makes most people react like they just heard nails dragging across a chalkboard. They immediately start thinking about military boot camps, strict teachers, or parents who took away their video games for getting bad grades. They associate discipline with punishment, restriction, and someone else controlling their behavior. No wonder most people avoid it like they avoid root canals or tax audits. But this reaction reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of what discipline actually is. Real discipline isn't about punishment or deprivation. It's about creating freedom through structure. When you have discipline, you get to choose your actions instead of letting your impulses choose for you. You wake up when you plan to wake up instead of when your body feels like it. You eat what supports your goals instead of whatever happens to be convenient. You spend time on activities that build your future instead of just entertaining your present moment. Discipline becomes the ultimate form of self-care when you realize it's how you treat yourself well consistently rather than just when you feel motivated. Someone who exercises regularly isn't punishing their body. They're caring for it systematically. Someone who manages their finances isn't depriving themselves of fun. They're ensuring they have more options for fun in the future. Someone who maintains their relationships isn't sacrificing their independence. They're investing in their long-term happiness and support network. Research from 2025 demonstrates how small daily practices build the mental muscle needed for bigger life decisions. When you consistently follow through on small commitments to yourself, you strengthen your ability to make difficult choices under pressure. People who maintain daily discipline habits show improved performance across multiple life areas because they've trained their brains to override immediate impulses in favor of long-term benefits. This mental strength transfers from small decisions to major life choices. The problem most people have with discipline isn't that they're lazy or weak. The problem is they rely entirely on willpower, which functions like a muscle that gets tired with use. Successful discipline requires systems that function independently of how you feel on any given day. Instead of asking yourself whether you feel like exercising this morning, you create conditions that make exercising automatic. You lay out your workout clothes the night before. You schedule specific times for specific activities. You build routines that carry you through the actions regardless of your emotional state in the moment. Non-negotiable daily practices serve as discipline training wheels because they're simple habits you commit to maintaining regardless of circumstances. These aren't ambitious goals that require perfect conditions. They're basic actions you can complete even during your worst days. The key is choosing practices that feel almost too easy to skip, but still require intentional action. Take making your bed every morning as the perfect example. This simple habit takes 2 minutes, but requires you to act deliberately instead of just letting your environment happen to you. When you make your bed immediately after getting up, you start your day with a completed task that creates momentum for other positive choices. You've proven to yourself that you can follow through on commitments before you've even had coffee. The made bed becomes visual evidence that you're someone who maintains standards and takes care of their space. Making your bed also creates what researchers call implementation intentions. You decide in advance exactly when and how you'll do a habit to make it automatic. Your brain doesn't have to debate whether today is a good day for progress because you've already made that decision. You just follow the predetermined plan regardless of feelings or circumstances. The beauty of this practice lies in its consistency across all life situations. Whether you're at home, staying in a hotel, visiting family, or dealing with a crisis, you can still make whatever bed you slept in. The habit doesn't depend on perfect conditions, special equipment, or feeling motivated. It just requires 2 minutes of intentional action that reinforces your identity as someone who honors their commitments. People who maintain consistent daily practices demonstrate superior performance across various life areas. They report higher productivity levels, better physical and mental health, and stronger relationships compared to people who rely on sporadic bursts of motivation. The consistent application of discipline in one area creates positive spillover effects into other areas because you've developed the mental habit of following through on commitments. Choosing discipline practices that align with your personality increases your chances of long-term success. If you hate mornings, don't commit to elaborate morning routines. If you love learning, choose practices that involve reading or skill development. If you value relationships, pick habits that improve your connections with others. Self-selected habits have higher success rates than externally imposed ones because they feel personally meaningful rather than arbitrary. Your discipline practices should feel challenging enough to require effort, but simple enough that you can maintain them during difficult periods. If your practice is too easy, it won't build mental strength. If it's too complicated, you'll abandon it when life gets stressful. The sweet spot is activities that make you slightly uncomfortable, but don't overwhelm your current capacity. Maintaining consistency when motivation disappears requires focusing on the process rather than the outcome. Some days you won't feel like doing your discipline practice. Some days it will feel pointless or too small to matter. Some days you'll want to skip it because you're tired, busy, or dealing with other priorities. These are exactly the days when maintaining your practice matters most because you're training yourself to honor commitments regardless of feelings. The never miss twice rule helps maintain consistency during imperfect periods. If you skip your practice one day, you absolutely cannot skip it the next day. Missing once is human. Missing twice starts a pattern that becomes increasingly difficult to break. One missed day doesn't ruin your progress, but 2 consecutive missed days can derail weeks of momentum. Creating accountability systems supports consistency when internal motivation wavers. This might mean tracking your practice on a calendar where you can see your streak. It might mean telling someone else about your commitment so they can check on your progress. It might mean joining a group of people who share similar practices. External accountability provides structure when internal discipline feels insufficient. The compound effect of daily discipline creates unshakable confidence because you develop a track record of following through on promises to yourself. Each day you honor your commitment, you prove that you're someone who does what they say they'll do. This evidence accumulates over time until you genuinely believe you can achieve anything you set your mind to accomplish. This confidence isn't based on wishful thinking or positive affirmations. It's based on concrete evidence of your own reliability. When you face bigger challenges, you approach them with the knowledge that you've successfully maintained difficult commitments before. You trust yourself to persist through obstacles because persistence has become your default response to difficulty rather than an exceptional effort you can only maintain temporarily. Daily discipline transforms from feeling like restriction into feeling like freedom because you're no longer at the mercy of your impulses, moods, or circumstances. You've developed the ability to choose your actions based on your values and goals rather than your immediate feelings. This control over your own behavior becomes the foundation for achieving anything you genuinely want to accomplish. But understanding these 5 methods means nothing if you don't grasp the mathematical reality of how small daily improvements actually accumulate over time. The compound effect revealed. Here's the math that most people never calculate. If you improve by just 1% every single day for 1 year, you don't get 365% better. You get nearly 38 times better. That's not a typo. When you compound daily improvements, the growth becomes exponential rather than linear. Most people think small changes don't matter because they're looking at tomorrow instead of next year. They see the 1% and assume it's insignificant. They miss the compound effect entirely. Let's break down what this actually means in real life. If you save $5 daily, you'll have $1,825 by year's end, while someone who plans to save large amounts sporadically usually saves nothing. The person who commits to small daily actions accumulates massive results, while the person waiting for perfect conditions to make big changes stays exactly where they started. Research confirms that people consistently underestimate exponential growth and overestimate linear progress. This cognitive bias explains why most people abandon effective strategies too early while pursuing ineffective strategies too long. They expect their efforts to produce proportional results immediately, not realizing that compound growth starts slowly, then accelerates dramatically. But here's where patience becomes crucial in our instant gratification world. Compound growth works like planting a seed that looks insignificant for months, but eventually grows into a towering tree. Your brain expects everything to work like your smartphone with immediate responses to every input, but meaningful change operates on a completely different timeline. The timeline for seeing results varies by method, and understanding this prevents premature abandonment. Vision clarity typically produces noticeable effects within 2 to 3 weeks as your daily decisions become more aligned with your written goals. Social circle auditing shows results within 1 to 2 months as you spend more time with growth-oriented people and less time with energy drains. Micro goals create momentum within days, but the confidence boost from consistent achievement takes about 6 weeks to solidify. Being different feels hardest in the first month when social resistance peaks, but becomes easier around week 8 when people adjust to your new patterns. Daily discipline practices show immediate benefits in terms of self-respect and control, but the compound confidence effects don't fully emerge until month 3. This is why most people quit before the real benefits begin. They expect linear progress, but compound growth starts slowly. The journey from default to design living resembles learning to ride a bicycle more than flipping a light switch. At first, you wobble constantly and need support to stay upright. Every small movement requires conscious thought and effort. You fall down repeatedly and wonder if you'll ever get the hang of it. Then, gradually, the separate actions integrate into smooth coordination. Eventually, riding becomes so automatic that you can do it while thinking about other things entirely. Compound growth feels deceptively slow initially because the improvements are genuinely small. Going from 0 push-ups to 1 push-up represents infinite percentage improvement, but it doesn't feel impressive. Going from reading 0 pages to reading 10 pages daily creates massive long-term benefits, but day 2 doesn't feel much different from day 1. Your brain interprets the lack of dramatic change as evidence that the method isn't working, when actually it's working exactly as designed. The exponential phase arrives after you've built enough momentum that small efforts produce bigger results. Someone who's been reading daily for 6 months can absorb information faster than when they started. Someone who's been networking consistently develops a reputation that opens doors they didn't have to knock on. Someone who's been exercising regularly has the energy and strength to tackle more challenging workouts. The compound effect accelerates as your improved capabilities enable even greater improvements. Research on delayed gratification reveals why people who persist through the slow initial phase achieve dramatically better results than those who quit early. Studies show that individuals who expect gradual progress and plan for it experience less stress during the waiting period and maintain higher motivation levels throughout the journey. They frame the slow start as evidence that they're building something substantial, rather than proof that their efforts aren't working. The psychological benefits of compound thinking extend beyond the specific area you're improving. When you experience how small, consistent actions create major changes in one area, you start applying the same principle everywhere else. You realize that every aspect of your life responds to the same compound dynamics. Your relationships improve through small daily kindnesses. Your finances grow through small regular contributions. Your health improves through small consistent choices. The key insight is tracking progress over weeks and months rather than days. Daily fluctuations mean nothing in the context of compound growth. Some days you'll perform better, some days worse, but the trend line over time reveals the true impact of your efforts. People who focus on daily results get discouraged by normal variation. People who focus on monthly trends see the compound effect clearly. Common pitfalls that cause early abandonment include expecting immediate dramatic results, comparing your beginning to someone else's middle, and focusing on daily fluctuations instead of long-term trends. People also quit when they don't see linear progress, not realizing that compound growth includes periods of apparent stagnation followed by rapid advancement. The most dangerous pitfall is perfectionism, believing that missing one day ruins all previous progress, and using minor setbacks as excuses to abandon the entire effort. The compound effect works in reverse too, which explains why default living becomes increasingly difficult over time. Small, poor choices compound into major problems. Skipping exercise occasionally becomes never exercising. Avoiding difficult conversations becomes dysfunctional relationships. Procrastinating on small tasks becomes overwhelming backlogs. The same mathematical principles that create exponential improvement also create exponential decline when you're moving in the wrong direction. Starting your own 1% daily improvement journey requires choosing one method and committing to consistency over intensity. Pick the method that feels most relevant to your current situation. Write down your commitment and track your daily progress. Focus on showing up rather than achieving perfect results. Trust that small actions compound into life-changing results even when you can't see the progress happening. The compound effect is invisible until it becomes undeniable. But even when you understand this principle intellectually and commit to applying it consistently, there's still one reality that nobody wants to discuss openly. The default trap recovery plan. Most people will slip back into old patterns at some point during their transformation journey. You're going to wake up one morning and hit snooze 5 times instead of getting up early like you planned. You're going to order pizza instead of cooking the healthy meal you prepped. You're going to skip your daily reading to watch Netflix episodes you've already seen twice. You're going to have days when you act like the default person you were trying to leave behind. This isn't a character flaw or evidence that you're destined to fail. It's completely normal and happens to everyone who attempts to change their life. Even the most disciplined design people you admire have days when they fall back into old patterns. The difference isn't that they never slip up. The difference is how they respond when they do slip up. Think about it like learning to walk. When babies are figuring out how to put one foot in front of the other, they fall down constantly. They don't throw themselves on the ground and declare that walking is impossible. They don't spend 3 days analyzing why they fell. They just get back up and try again. Adults who are learning new habits could benefit from adopting the same approach instead of turning every small setback into a dramatic life crisis. When you miss your morning workout, you have 2 choices. You can either beat yourself up about it for the rest of the day, or you can put on your shoes and take a 5-minute walk around the block. The 5-minute walk doesn't make up for the missed workout, but it keeps you connected to your identity as someone who exercises. It maintains momentum instead of letting one missed day turn into a week of inactivity. Research on resilience reveals fascinating differences between how successful people handle setbacks compared to those who remain stuck. Successful people treat failures as temporary events rather than permanent conditions. When they skip their exercise routine, they think I missed my workout today instead of I'm terrible at sticking to exercise. They view setbacks as data points rather than evidence of their fundamental character flaws. Recognizing when you've slipped into default mode requires honest self-assessment without harsh self-judgment. Default mode shows up in predictable patterns. You start reacting to your day instead of creating it. You check your phone first thing in the morning instead of following your planned routine. You complain about problems instead of solving them. You make excuses for why today isn't a good day to pursue your goals. You wait for motivation instead of taking action regardless of how you feel. The key warning signs include feeling like a victim of your circumstances, blaming external factors for your lack of progress, and expecting different results while taking the same actions. When you catch yourself saying things like I don't have time or it's too hard right now or I'll start again on Monday, you know you've temporarily returned to default thinking patterns. Getting back on track quickly requires implementing what successful habit researchers call the never miss twice rule. If you skip your daily practice once, you absolutely cannot skip it twice in a row. Missing once is human. Missing twice starts a dangerous pattern that becomes increasingly difficult to break. One missed day doesn't destroy months of progress, but 2 consecutive missed days can unravel weeks of momentum. The fastest recovery strategy involves immediate action rather than extended analysis. Instead of spending hours figuring out why you failed, spend 5 minutes doing the thing you missed. Instead of promising to do better tomorrow, Do something small today that moves you back in the right direction. Instead of waiting for perfect conditions to resume your habits, restart with whatever conditions you currently have. Shame and self-judgment create the biggest obstacles to quick recovery because they keep you stuck in default thinking longer than necessary. When you miss a workout and spend the rest of the day calling yourself lazy and undisciplined, you're not helping yourself get back on track. You're reinforcing negative self-talk that makes it harder to take positive action. Self-compassion isn't about making excuses. It's about treating yourself with the same kindness you'd show a friend who was struggling. Avoid all-or-nothing thinking that convinces you one mistake ruins all previous progress. People who expect setbacks and plan for them perform dramatically better long-term than those who expect perfect consistency. When you accept that lapses are part of the process, rather than signs of personal failure, you recover faster and maintain momentum longer. Planning for setbacks means deciding in advance how you'll respond when you inevitably fall back into old patterns. It means having specific protocols for getting back on track instead of hoping you'll figure it out in the moment. Identify your biggest relapse triggers and have a simple restart plan ready to implement immediately. Building resilience into your design life systems means creating structures that become stronger under stress rather than weaker. This involves designing your habits to be flexible rather than rigid. Instead of committing to exercise for 1 hour every day, commit to putting on your workout clothes every day. Instead of promising to read for 30 minutes nightly, promise to open a book every night. These micro-commitments are easier to maintain during difficult periods and create momentum for larger actions when conditions improve. The most empowering truth about the default trap is that every single moment offers a new opportunity to choose design over default. You don't have to wait until Monday to restart. You don't need to fix everything that went wrong before moving forward. You don't have to earn the right to try again through perfect behavior. Right now, in this moment, you can choose to take one small action that aligns with the person you want to become. That choice is always available to you, regardless of what happened 5 minutes ago or 5 months ago. The question becomes, how do you turn these 5 methods into a systematic approach that works for your specific situation? Your design life blueprint. Creating your design life blueprint starts with choosing your entry point based on your specific situation, rather than trying to implement all 5 methods simultaneously. Your starting point depends on which area creates the biggest bottleneck in your current progress. If you struggle with direction and constantly feel scattered, begin with Method 1, the Vision Clarity System. If you're surrounded by negative influences that drain your energy, start with Method 2, the Strategic Social Circle Audit. If you have big dreams but consistently fail to follow through, Method 3, the Micro-Goal Mastery Framework should be your first focus. If you avoid challenges because you fear judgment, Method 4, the Courage to be Different protocol becomes your priority. If you lack consistency in any area of your life, Method 5, the Daily Discipline Practice System, provides your foundation. Someone who has clear goals but terrible social influences will benefit more from auditing their circle first. Someone with supportive relationships but no clear direction needs vision clarity before anything else. Someone with both vision and good influences but no follow-through needs to master micro-goals. This assessment prevents you from working on secondary issues while primary obstacles remain unaddressed. The realistic implementation approach involves focusing on one method per month to prevent overwhelm while building sustainable momentum. Spend your first month establishing your foundational practice by choosing one method and committing to its basic requirements daily. If you selected vision clarity, write down your chief aim every morning for 30 consecutive days. If you chose social circle auditing, spend this month honestly evaluating your 5 closest relationships and identifying one person you want to spend less time with and one type of person you want to meet. After mastering your first practice, add one new method each month while maintaining your previous practices. Someone who started with vision clarity might begin identifying micro-goals that support their chief aim. Someone who began with social circle work might start practicing small acts of courage to attract better relationships. The key is building on your existing foundation rather than starting something completely separate. This gradual layering creates sustainable change rather than the dramatic overhauls that typically fail within weeks. When obstacles arise, adjust your practices if they feel too hard or too easy rather than abandoning them entirely. Most implementation problems stem from choosing approaches that don't match your personality, schedule, or current capacity. If your daily practice feels overwhelming, make it smaller until it becomes manageable. If it feels too simple to matter, increase the difficulty slightly until it requires genuine effort. The goal is finding the sweet spot where your practice challenges you without breaking you. Tracking progress requires simple measurement tools that don't become burdens themselves. A basic calendar where you mark successful days with a check mark provides enough feedback to maintain motivation without requiring elaborate systems. The most successful habit formers track completion rather than perfection. They measure whether they showed up, not whether they performed flawlessly. This approach prevents perfectionism from derailing your progress when you have imperfect days. Different life situations require adapted approaches that work within existing constraints rather than despite them. Students can integrate micro goals into their study routines by committing to read one additional page per subject daily. Parents can practice social circle auditing by evaluating which other parents and family activities support their values versus those that drain their energy without providing meaningful benefits. Career changers benefit most from vision clarity combined with courage practices, since changing professional directions requires both clear objectives and willingness to face uncertainty. Entrepreneurs need discipline practices more than other methods initially, since building a business demands consistent action despite fluctuating motivation and irregular feedback cycles. Celebrating small wins prevents the discouragement that kills most improvement efforts before they gain momentum. Acknowledge every successful day rather than waiting for major milestones. Share your progress with people who support your growth rather than those who minimize your achievements. This positive reinforcement trains your brain to associate improvement efforts with good feelings rather than just delayed gratification. For additional support and detailed implementation guides, you can access comprehensive resources that provide step-by-step instructions for each method, troubleshooting advice for common obstacles, and tracking templates that make progress measurement effortless. These materials include specific scripts for difficult conversations, sample daily routines that integrate multiple methods, and case studies of people who successfully transformed their lives using these exact approaches. Leveling up each method happens naturally once basic practices become automatic. Vision clarity graduates from daily writing to weekly reviews and monthly revisions. Social circle work evolves from evaluating current relationships to actively building new connections with growth-minded individuals. Micro-goals increase in scope and complexity as your confidence and capability expand. Courage practices move from small social risks to major life decisions that align with your values. Discipline habits multiply as you prove your ability to maintain commitments consistently. When all 5 methods become second nature, you operate from a completely different paradigm than default people around you. You wake up with clear purpose because your vision guides your priorities. You feel energized by your relationships because you've surrounded yourself with people who support your growth. You achieve your objectives because you've mastered the art of breaking big goals into manageable actions. You make decisions based on your values rather than other people's opinions. You follow through on commitments because discipline has become your natural response to challenges rather than an exceptional effort you can only maintain temporarily. The transformation from default to design living doesn't require special talents, perfect circumstances, or extraordinary luck. It requires something much simpler yet infinitely more powerful. The choice to live differently starts with a single decision, followed by consistent action. Here's your challenge. Start with the practice that resonates most and commit to it for the next 30 days. Write down your chief aim tomorrow morning. Audit one relationship this week. Set one micro goal you can achieve daily. Choose courage over comfort in one small situation. Establish one daily discipline practice. Small changes create big results when you apply them consistently. Someone who reads 10 pages daily finishes 50 books per year, while others finish none. Someone who saves $5 daily accumulates nearly $2,000 while others save nothing. Every design life started with someone who got tired of living by default and decided to take control. Imagine a year from now looking back at how one small change changed everything.